Welcome again to It's the End of the Week. Today we're going to be talking about vibe coding with Alex Moreau, and we've also introduced Copilot to this podcast. So we're going to be really going all out on everything AI, from the assistant of Copilot helping us potentially with some ideas of what we should do, and using some of the vibe coding apps that we know, and to just kind of talk about what it is, what it's good at, and what to maybe watch out for. So we could maybe start by diving in with some quick introductions and then kicking things off. Do you want to go first, Alex?
Sure thing. I'll go before Copilot. My name's Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm leading the Dynamics CE team here at LID. Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I'm Matthew. I'm leading our Dynamics practice at LID. And what about you, Copilot? What are you doing in this podcast?
Hey, everyone. I'm here to help you brainstorm ideas and answer questions, and maybe offer some insights on AI and vibe coding. So whenever you need a bit of assistance or a fresh perspective, just bring me in and I'll jump right in. Looking forward to chatting about all things AI with you both.
All right, thanks a bunch. So I think the first thing that we need to talk about is kind of what vibe coding is and where it fits in the spectrum of development. So people might be familiar with the terms no code, low code, pro code. So if you think about how those different terms kind of come together, is the easiest way of building things is through no-code solutions. So if you think of a no-code solution, would be a drag and drop. It might be a workflow that you might be doing. That would be a no-code solution. A low-code solution would be something where you might have an approval process, but then you could insert some snippets of code to have any kind of advanced logic. So if you think of any kind of advanced approvals where you need to look at a specific field or potentially build additional logic, then you can add some code in it. And then quickly people realize that as you're doing low code, it escalates into pro code. And what pro code is where a developer needs to kind of go full stack and write different code to be able to build apps. Vibe coding actually fits between the low code and the pro code. And what it does, or what it's trying to do, is to, once again, democratize building apps by using natural language. And the reason why it's called vibe coding is because the concept of it is that you don't want to be distracted by all the technical elements that go into building solutions, and you want to be able to kind of just go at it and vibe with your app and just kind of build through it. And that's what we're going to be talking today, because I think there's some good use cases and maybe some things to watch out for. Alex, what are some use cases that you ran into?
Yeah, for vibe coding specifically?
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're going to dive into this in a second, but I think the more logical piece of vibe coding is just getting your initial ideas generated and seeing what those look like. We're going to talk a lot about prototyping, and I'll remind you, Matt, we've already done a podcast on low code, no code, where we've talked about what the challenges of that and what are the real use cases. I feel like it's starting to overlap a bit with vibe coding, and vibe coding is taking us at a step further where we can go deeper into our ideas and actually see what they look like. So today we're going to have the opportunity to vibe code a bit, maybe build an app together. Maybe we'll monetize it. I don't know what's going to go on from there.
Yeah, I think ultimately what vibe coding is really going to assist with is, like you're saying, prototyping. It might remove some of the need to use prototyping tools such as Figma or other elements where you're just going to kind of build a canvas and then you're going to give it to a dev. The goal of vibe coding and prototyping in the app directly is to understand the limits of what's actually available in that app, how that look and feel is going to work in that app, is really getting that UI ready. Would you agree with that, Copilot?
Absolutely. Vibe coding really shines when you want to quickly translate your vision into something tangible. It helps you keep that creative flow going without getting bogged down by too much complexity right away. So yeah, it can definitely streamline that early idea to prototype phase and let you feel your app sooner.
Yeah, and I think if you think of like app development, the different steps that you have your planning step, your design step, your build, test, onboard, and launch. Where I think vibe coding gets you to is the design step. I think if you believe that vibe coding right now anyways will get you to a proper build or proper step, that's where you might be creating technical debt, just because although the front end might look very nice and snazzy, the back end might not be as robust and might not be able to actually meet the standards for volume and safety and all those different elements. So that's where we got to be careful. Prototyping is great. When it gets to actually building production ready apps, get a real dev to help you out. But let's explore what that could look like.
Before we hop in, I have a couple questions for you, Matt. You mentioned the term technical debt. You mentioned also democratization, a big word. Tell me more about what that exactly means. I know we talked about it a bit on our previous podcast, but I think that it's still very relevant.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with anything that is, I would say, low code and probably vibe code right now is because it democratizes coding, it also maybe skips some important step into building enterprise solutions. So if you think of when you're building an enterprise solution or anything that is going to support a team, you're going to typically do the requirements, you're going to bring it up to IT, and then IT is going to be able to tell you, hey, we already have something for that, or hey, this is the app that we should use to build it. It's going to provide guidance to make sure that you have a cohesive solution architecture throughout your business. What can happen, and why I introduce technical debt, is as you're giving non-technical resources or non-IT resources the ability to build these apps, they don't necessarily have a good understanding of everything that's available in the business, and that's where they might just build like a lot of these one-offs kind of tools to solve for problems similar to what they were doing in Excel, right? Like Excel is technical debt to a certain extent. Like you have all these Excel spreadsheets everywhere, you don't really know what they're used for, they're very fragile. Now what you're doing is you're ultimately giving non-technical people another type of tool to ingest that technical debt in your business. But it could also help facilitate discussions, because sometimes the challenge is to get your ideas on paper. It could be very long and daunting. It doesn't allow you to do it in an efficient manner, and that's where vibe coding should be used. And where it should not be used for technical debt, like I said, is to build these one-offs, fragile solutions that don't have good IT governance on top of it.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, and I think this was the overall messaging we had also on the low-code, no-code side, was our goal with vibe coding is for ideation, it's for prototyping. It's not necessarily to have a long-term solution or to build a necessarily long-term solution. It might be to convince someone to build a long-term solution, but it should never become a core piece of my actual building within an ecosystem.
No, to me, it's just a new tool to design and to communicate requirements to a professional IT team. And even if you think of vibe coding, and we're going to get to it a bit later, but even if you can use natural language, doesn't mean you even know what to use natural language for. You don't know what the requirements should be if you're not in that space. And that's where, even if vibe coding or low code are concepts that are available, not everyone can improvise themselves as being able to build these tools. And consultants or people that have extensive experience in that industry, in those tools or in those different problems, are going to help guide the conversation to be able to vibe code properly. Does that make sense, Copilot?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Vibe coding is a powerful tool for ideation, but it doesn't replace the expertise of developers or IT professionals. It's more like a creative bridge between an idea and a refined set of requirements that experts can then build on. It's all about getting that conversation started in a more visual and intuitive way, but with proper guidance to avoid long-term pitfalls.
All right.
Love it.
Thanks for the fact check, Copilot. So, Alex, I know that you talked about technical debt, and you had another question as well that I don't remember if I answered properly.
We were talking about democratization. Just the word that puts my mind in a blender.
Democratization of code, yeah.
Which I feel like you touched on. If I understand that correctly, it's the idea of giving everybody some sort of power on the technical side to bring their idea to fruition.
Expedite that to be able to convey it in the most efficient way as possible.
Okay, fair enough.
Exactly. Maybe pulling Copilot back in, is there anything, Copilot, that you would suggest for us to potentially vibe code in this episode, understanding that, as lead consultants, we are a distribution manufacturing operations professionals, and, we help clients with anything from building rep tools, command portals, anything that is just kind of operationally focused. What would you like for us to vibe code today?
Given your expertise in distribution and manufacturing operations, maybe we could vibe code something like a streamlined order tracking dashboard or a quick inventory lookup tool. Those are areas where natural language could help describe what you need quickly, and you could visually lay out the flow of information. It's something practical that fits your domain and could spark some good discussion. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. I like the order tracking, and even maybe what I would add to that is just container tracking. So one thing that we run into in supply chain a lot is people want to understand whenever they procure inventory overseas or over a long distance and it has multimodal transportation, kind of where that container is at in this life cycle, and just the visibility of how that those handling equipments move across the different supply chain. Maybe we could do something around that, and maybe something like a vendor management portal that has container tracking in it. I think that would be a good idea. What do you think, Alex?
I think that's a good idea. I'm already writing in the prompt here. So for anybody curious, I'm using vibe.powerapps.com, which essentially allows us, this is a Microsoft product, allows us to vibe code and takes on that model-driven app mindset or model and canvas-driven app mindset that Power Apps already offers us today. And with our prompts, I'm hoping we get to see a cool application. So what I've written so far here is, hey, let's build a container. I always like to say hi to my AI. Hey, let's build a container and order tracking tool. I want an app that gives me visibility of where my orders are across my supply chain. You mentioned also wanting it tracked per vendor.
Yeah, ideally.
Give us visibility on our vendors and their related supply.
And I think one of the important things is to understand, are there any late shipments, right? Because that's really what you want to take action on. So I think it would be important to have maybe just visibility or additional insight on what are late shipments, what are proposed action items, whatever that might be. What do you think, Copa? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds spot on. You've got a clear concept here. Visibility across vendors, order status, and flagging late shipments for action. That's a solid use case for vibe coding. It's focused, practical, and gives you a lot of potential to see how the tool can help quickly mock up a real-world solution. Let's see how it takes shape.
Sounds good. Let's just give it a bit of time. We are we send the first prompt, and Alex is looking at what it's currently building.
So what I noticed from this off the bat is that, as I was mentioning before, it takes that mindset of a model-driven app or a canvas-driven app, but it's really building an app the same way that a lot of our Power Apps, out-of-the-box Power Apps, are actually built. So it's delimiting users, it's building kind of their persona and how they would be using the application, and then it's building tables and making relations between the tables. So for whoever can see my screen right now, we've kind of popped out it, but if I go back into the Data tab, I can see all my different tables and how they're related, and this is exactly how we would manually build apps today. So it's taking the words that I'm using and kind of taking that same flow that I would typically do to build an app and kind of doing it all for me. It's a great starting point for me to already have these tables built, some of the key information that I would want to have. So if I'm looking at vendors, for example, I have vendor name, contact email, phone number. It already knows, all right, these are the typical things that you would want tracking for a vendor. Once it's done all that, then it's starting to generate the code. So you can see here on my screen, I got a lot of lines of code just being generated, and I think this is kind of the last step before we actually get to the app.
And what are some things that, so this looks really nice, looks really shiny. We can see you created the tables,
Yep.
the relationships. What are things as you're looking at is that they stand out to be, hey, these are watch items or these are elements that I know that I'm going to need to rework as I'm thinking about building an actual app.
Well, already, I actually look at the model of tables related to each other, and I can see certain risks appearing. I don't necessarily want a one-to-many in some cases that can create some sort of trouble in my tables when I'm generating them. I will probably need to rework some of my tables, but already the fact that I've created all these tables and have already a lot of custom fields available to me has saved me a lot of time in terms of building the foundation. Moving things around, making slight edits to verbiage and stuff like that I can do, and that's fine. That's personal taste, and I'd rather take ownership of it once it's been generated. But already just this piece is something that tends to take me a lot of time because I'm thinking through it. on my own, and this is kind of the basic setup that I can start with.
And would you say, so if we go back to like the design step of a project, right now our typical design step is we do requirement gathering, we come back, we document in some kind of traditional format, either Word or Excel or something like that. Would you see this being just an additional piece to the documentation that we do after the design sessions? Or would you even encourage to potentially use this as you're talking about the different requirements to even capture requirements as you're speaking through them?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. Ultimately, what we're doing during design sessions is not only trying to understand requirements, but trying to map out feasibility and have an idea of what the future state will look like. This streamlines that vision aspect, where if we are able to generate an actual visual view, and let's be honest, building a Figma can be tedious at times. If we're able to do it within 2 or 3 minutes, which is what it's taking right now to generate this app, then already we can show this to a client and have their initial feeling, and that'll make them think of things. If we think of our requirement gathering piece, a lot of times we know that there will be some requirements that kind of fall through the cracks. That is just a reality of a consulting project. When we're building the application and they finally get to see it and interact with it, that's when things start clicking for them. They know their business more than we do. They know where the gaps might be just by looking at it. We have an opportunity with this to show it to them earlier, at least show a mock-up, and have them react to it and potentially figure out some of these gaps that would fall through the cracks typically.
And I think that's kind of a recurring theme of what works well in a project versus what extends timelines or budget is get something in front of the client as soon as possible. That way you get their feedback as soon as possible. Because no matter how much you have discussions about it, no matter how much you design and you come up with these great potential solutions, until someone sees it, it's very difficult to say, oh, that's exactly what I had in mind. That what that does, it helps bridge the, oh no, you properly understood what I had in mind. Now after that, let's go and build it properly. But that's where I think there's a good use case for it, is to bring that visual much earlier on in the process so that we can do those tweaks, and that whenever we build the first iteration of it, it's much closer to what they were expecting.
Absolutely.
And even if you compare with other visualization tools, the nice thing about vibe coding, and we're taking the Power Platform in this case, is that it's going to vibe code and it's going to give it's going to give a UI that is actually possible with that type of platform, because every type of platform has different UI capabilities. Mm-hmm. So when you build it directly on top of the app, well, then you're also removing the opportunity to then run into a situation where, unfortunately, the UI can't support what you've put forward.
Absolutely. All right. Our app is generated. It's called the Order Visibility app.
Might need some rework on the name.
Yeah, we'll workshop it.
That's where you see it might be iterative.
Absolutely. So off the bat, I can see that I have more of a visual kind of UI. Like I have information presented to me right away. I see that on the left here I have shipments where I can track movement and delivery, and it automatically gives me a snippet of what's going on right now with these 5 shipments. I got 2 in transit, 1 delayed, 1 at risk, 1 delivered. I also have a list of vendors over here, so I can see that I can kind of navigate to those. I don't know if this is clickable or not. It doesn't seem to be. And then I also see the actual orders that are probably referring to my states here on the left. So this is great just for multiple reasons. Already I have an idea of what's going wrong and what's going right with my initial idea. I have vendors, which is great. I know that I have to have multiple orders linked to these vendors, and I know that I have to have different states. And this can already maybe start my conversation with the client, what states do I actually care about, and which ones do I want to see in my final product? And right now, I would, as a client, I would see this and be oh, what if I want a lot more visibility on what's going on with the delayed ones, and that's the first thing I want to see. Yeah. I need to know what actions I can take. I don't really care that much about state. I care about what can I do.
Yeah. So maybe the client initially communicated, I want my different statuses, but ultimately what they meant to communicate was, I want to highlight which ones are actionable POs, and that's what that allows you to do. And kind of coming back to the original idea of vibe coding, but it is to remove that technical barrier and make it much more of a flow of talking in natural language to an app and transferring what we as consultants have understood to be the requirement to a visual representation to then continue to have those additional conversations with clients.
Absolutely. Other things I notice. It actually generates a pie chart for me. Nowhere did I necessarily mention that I wanted dashboards or anything like that or charts. But I do like the fact that it takes that like proactive approach of like giving me some visibility directly on my homepage. I know that when we're looking at our model-driven apps, at least, we're always thinking, okay, the first thing you want to see is kind of what do I need to do today, and can I click on it so I can start working on it right away.
Yeah.
So I like that it's kind of taking that same mindset with this app, and I can see the shipments that are the latest shipments. So I do have like charts and visuals that allow me to kind of manage my work right off the bat. It's pretty well built, honestly. Maybe not well built, probably not the right word, but
Yeah, like it's a visual, right? Like
Yeah.
the back end might not necessarily be
Yeah.
as strong as we would want it to be. But the thing is that before you even start talking about the back end, you need to have an understanding of what the visual, what the functionality
The
is,
requirements,
what
yeah.
people care about. And to me, vibe coding helps build requirements, document the requirements, and then you have this, and you could
Yep.
create documentation to give it to a developer and have them actually build this this app out. I know we spoke a lot at Copilot. Do you have any additional kind of comments of like how this could play into the design process?
I think you've covered it really well. Vibe coding basically accelerates that visualization process and brings those conversations forward. The quicker you can show something tangible, the quicker you can identify gaps or validate assumptions. It's like a fast track to alignment between what the client envisions and what's technically feasible. So it's a powerful addition to your toolkit for early stage design and communication.
Copilot, please stop buttering me up. This is great. I feel like this is engineered.
This is the
for-
cheerleader you
Yeah,
need
that's it.
day to day.
That's what I needed. I need to actually do more of these Copilot kind of stints. But no, thanks for that. That's kind of what we were hoping to demonstrate today and go through. And once again, I don't think this is a revolutionary thing. It's one of the use case that AI can help with. And the important thing is that people don't believe that this replaces pro code. The same way that low code does not replace pro code. We've seen it multiple times. We have clients that always starts by saying, "Oh, I could probably build that myself," and then they try building it themselves, and then they reach back out to us and say, "Actually, I need someone that understands the platform, understands the intricacies of it, and could guide me through that." And I think that's going to be a very, very similar thing,
Yeah.
where it's going to provide an additional subset of tools for people to create that visual aid. But consultants, will help kind of bring it over the line and make sure that you're building something that's stable and something that is scalable in your business and that aligns with the rest of your solutions architect and your vision at IT.
Absolutely. I do want to make the relation as well with a conversation we had in our last podcast about low code, no code. With all of this power that now we're giving to everybody, there comes a little bit more pressure on IT. Do you want to talk a bit about that? I know that you mentioned you kind of highlighted that in the last podcast.
Yeah, I think it definitely shifts the way IT needs to understand their role in the business. Before, because there was this technical barrier that end users needed to go through, so they needed to go through IT to be able to get any kind of enterprise systems, unless we're using Excel, right? But Excel quickly has limitations. Now what's happening is that those limitations are becoming much further on the development spectrum. So IT needs to actually reach out to the different department, reach out to people, understand what's going on, because or else they're not going to have visibility. It doesn't need to go through them anymore. So someone in IT should shift their mindset or adapt their mindset to understand that they're no longer the gatekeepers. And if they want to bring real value to their business, well, they need to dive into understand what people need and to be able to turn around in a reasonable time and really support the business. Because more that we have these tools available, more that people are going to believe that they could kind of do it on their own, which is a misconception, because ultimately IT needs to understand the overall solution architecture and make better requirements or better use of these different platforms. But it is going to be on IT's responsibility to dive in a bit more than they're doing today, because today they are the gatekeepers. Things don't get done unless it goes through them. Tomorrow, with these kind of tools of low code, no code, vibe code, democratizing that kind of spectrum and people being much more familiar with technology, well, then IT is no longer becoming a barrier, but it will create technical debt if IT is not able to understand what people want, take these concepts and bring them back to a larger enterprise solution.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. It really draws that line with our previous podcast, which I appreciate for sure. Some sort of continuity between our conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe what I would close this off with is just that if anyone appreciated this and would like to see more vibe coding and other apps, this was a very, very simple example. Love to do another podcast on this, or like feel free to reach out and ask questions or whatever you have in mind, and we'll gladly do another one.
I think we'd love to take somebody's idea and even potentially keep prompting. Today we only did a first prompt and then saw what happens, but you can keep asking questions. You can keep changing colors, changing the view of different pages and stuff. And we would love to dive deeper with anybody's idea for sure.
Yeah, so comment, subscribe, follow, do whatever you need. Let us know, and we'll happily do another one. So thank you, Alex, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Copilot, for buttering me up all podcasts. And thanks, everyone, for listening.
Appreciate it.